Okay, it is 10 a.m. So we're going to get started. Good morning. My name is Jill Ocasio, and I'm the Systems as well as the Digital and Technical Services Librarian at the Suny College of Optometry in New York City. But more importantly for today, I am the chair of the SUNYLA Midwinter Online Conference Committee, and I'd like to welcome you all to our seventh conference, Looking Forward, Creative Library Responses to Crises. We've got a great program. It's packed full of presentations that we're really excited about and that we hope will be of value to you. So in order to not waste any time getting to them, I'm just going to get some housekeeping items out of the way as quickly as possible so we can jump right in. So you can go to the next slide, please. As the presenters will be going, if you find that you have any questions, please use the Q&A button to ask them rather than the chat. Ask away. Also, if you're experiencing some technical difficulties, you can contact Bill Jones at Jones, Jonesw, at Geneseo, GENESEO.edu. If you are on social media and you are tweeting or posting about the conference, we do have a hashtag. It is hashtag SUNYLA MW21, SUNYLA MW21. Next slide, please. I would also like to thank our awesome conference team for putting all of this together today. It takes a lot of hard work. I know everyone on the team is really, really passionate about putting this together, and we hope that you all enjoy it. So just a big thank you to everyone's hard work. Jennifer DeVito from Stony Brook University, Bill Jones, SUNY Geneseo, Carrie Martin from SUNY Purchase, Jessica McGivney from SUNY Farmingdale, and Jen Parker from SUNY Cortland. Next slide, please. And finally, we ask that you save the date for our annual SUNYLA conference. This year, it is being held on June 16th through the 18th. It will be virtual this year, usually in person, but this one's going to be virtual, not a surprise. It will be hosted by SUNY Delhi, and they are still accepting proposals, so submit them now. I think there's a few more weeks or a couple more weeks open to submit the proposals. So please submit them if you are interested. Next slide, please. And with that, we are going to get started. I just want to quickly mention that all of today's presentations are going to be recorded, and the recordings will be sent to everyone who registered for the conference once those are uploaded. So if you miss something, you have to run out, don't worry, you'll be able to catch up. And with that, our first session is turning cataloging on its head, using Alma and Java to expedite handling of new materials, is being presented by John Myers and Hamza Ghumman. John Myers is the catalog and metadata librarian at Union College's Schaefer Library, a position he has held for 20 years. He has been a longtime member of ALA's CCDA and has been a regional trainer on basic cataloging. Hamza Ghumman is a student at Union College and is majoring in computer science. His interests include automation in the workplace. So John and Hamza, please take it away.
All right. Hopefully you can now see my first slide. Good morning, and thank you for having us present today on the evolution and revolution of cataloging workflows at Union College. And I would like to start by exploring the background of the 4 eras of cataloging, if you will, that we've had at Union College. I arrived in 2001 at the end of the days of old, when our cataloging and acquisitions workflows were not atypical for the time. And under our first ILS, these were characterized by a replication basically of our card catalog workflows, and each step of the acquisitions, cataloging, and final quality assurance review included one-by-one interaction with the same record. Our second era of batch cataloging under our second ILS saw a shift in the acquisitions workflow from OCLC to the book vendor as the primary source of our acquisitions records. And these records were delivered in batch. The delivery and matching of the corresponding OCLC records was then via the PromptCat/WorldShare Cataloging Partners service. And again, these OCLC records were similarly delivered in batch. In the cataloging side of things, we were still doing things one by one, though. We were able to bifurcate the cataloging workflow into high-quality records that bypass the copy catalogers, and a second stream of records that needed edits by those copy catalogers. This bifurcation was achieved through a one-by-one triage by our student assistants using detailed instructions to catch particular details, routine details, in the record, but also some very technical details like the encoding level in the leader. All editing questions were routed through the copy catalogers from the minor to the significant prior to the processing taking place. As before, after the processing, all items went through a final quality assurance review on a one-by-one basis. Initially performed entirely by the copy catalogers, but after our migration to Alma, we delegated a first pass to our student assistants who largely were replicating our triage process. Then we get to COVID. Last March, our campus was basically evacuated after the first instance of a positive case on the campus, followed quickly by the cascade of executive orders by the governor's office. We still ordered items throughout the New York pause, but we no longer had access to them when they were delivered. And rather than relying on the physical trucks to which we no longer had access, we shifted to using the acquisitions import job reports to generate a logical set and then an itemized set of the corresponding records. And without students, this triage shifted back to a copy cataloger who was able to triage the set on an entry-by-entry basis. As the records were identified as satisfactory or were able to be resolved, they were removed from the itemized set. Because we didn't have access to the actual items, the triage profile was significantly reduced to major encoding level issues and matters that would affect labeling. The residue records were retained in the set and then periodically reassessed to see if there had been improvements in the OCLC version. In the middle of all this, we realized that while it was effective for the New York pause, it wouldn't quite be sustainable for the resumption of on-site operations, but it did point to how to make further improvements and possibly be leveraged for management of vendor pre-processing. And at that point, in stepped Hamza and his internship and the development of the triage program. I'm going to jump ahead a little bit and talk about where we are now in our post-COVID new cataloging dynamic. As before, the acquisitions workflow is largely done in batch, but using the new triage program, we now triage the cataloging records in batch as well, testing for issues that are routine fixes or would affect labeling. From the associated outputs, we can now easily eyeball problems and non-problems with respect to cataloging edits and their resolution from a spreadsheet and avoid the need to pull up every record in the ILS. Similarly, we can easily eyeball problems and non-problems with respect to the processing from the spreadsheets, also without the need to pull up every record in the ILS. Major problems are easily separated out by the students for routing to the catalog and metadata librarian so that they can be upgraded at the master level in OCLC without the need to additionally go through the copy cataloger. And all records with a single call number and a known size will have been pre-groomed with location and oversize edits as needed, and therefore can be labeled without diverting them from the processing stream, which was an issue with our older workflow. As a result, over 90% of records proceed to the processing stage with minimal copy cataloger interaction, and such copy cataloger interaction is only with the specific records that warrant attention. The only one-by-one interaction with the records is now at the final quality assurance review phase, and only problems at that phase hit our copy cataloger. As a result of this, I can say that we tackled 5 months of New York PAWS acquisitions using about 1.5 FTE person weeks of labor. And that was by non-library personnel as well. And that did exclude our final quality assurance review. We also, as we were working out the dynamics of this workflow during the fall term, we had about a backlog of 3 months of fall term acquisitions, and we took about 3 weeks to work through those once we had the details ironed out after the end of the fall term. And lastly, despite a 2-week expanded holiday resets and 4 weeks of work study without having work study students available due to COVID quarantine dynamics, we're now down to about 3 trucks from catching up from all the materials that we've acquired since March 2020. I'll now turn it over to Hamza, who will go through his development of the program and some of the technical concerns it engendered.
Thanks, John. So Alma has an API available that retrieves the bibliographic record of an item given its MMS ID. This API was presented before, I believe, last year, but I quickly ran into the same problem that the presenter at the time noticed. The code made available by Alma to process what was returned by the API didn't output the control fields and the data fields. This was strange because the API did in fact return that metadata. I was able to make the necessary edits to the existing code and got my program access to the metadata I needed. I was now past the hurdle and I could automate the initial assessment during the triage process. We couldn't figure out how to export other data, such as the data produced by Drools in Alma's native interface, but I was able to reproduce the same algorithm in Java. The same can be done for any Drools algorithm. Catalogers now only have to look at records that require their attention. Given the resources and time to be able to apply more advanced technology, most of these edits can be automated as well. This has implication for larger colleges where this may be a significant portion of someone's job. I'm going to hand it back to John to show you what some of that workload boils down to.
Thanks, Hamza. So I talked a lot in the last slide, and now I'm just going to run through a series of slides in quick succession. I will note that we did make an operational decision to configure the API so that it was a read-only dynamic. Because of the scale of our operation, we felt that we could make the edits by hand rather than relying on an automated interface depending on that was generated from the assessments that were being made. So this is what we do now. So our this is the these are all screen grabs, and this is the import job report as found in the history tab of the manage jobs function under the admin cluster. From it, our acquisition staff member generates an Alma set of imported records. And this is the output set in the manage sets display. Well, actually, this is several of them because we're still navigating the file management dynamics of the previous shipments. But for each entry, we can access the results under the triple dot / ellipsis button. And as part of the development of the Java program and the API call, we found it most effective to work from a physical item set. So we have to build where the output from the job is a all title set. We needed to convert that to a new set based on the physical item scope. To do this, we use the advanced search magnifying glass and then change the search scope from all titles to physical items. The dynamics of this do need to be monitored as updates to Alma occurred. There was a significant change in the interface when the new MDE layout was introduced last summer. And I realize that even now, as we're navigating between old MDE and new MDE, I grabbed these screenshots from the old MDE, even though we have the layout, the new layout. It is very important to remember that the Java triage program that we are using is looking for the corresponding MMS IDs in a specific column of the input Excel data, and that those MMS IDs are output in different columns depending on which kind of set you are working with. So it is important to make the correct scope selection, as I learned when attempting to use the program after a 2-month hiatus. Once we have the corresponding physical item set, we output the set in Excel format, and we output all the fields for uniformity's sake, since obviously different users might have different current view configurations. This is what the Excel output looks like. Although we don't actually look at it at this point, this is just the data to pass through to the program. Hamza configured a very simple command line interface for those of us that don't have a lot of technical chops. And so basically we just have to click and drag as the instruction line says there, the associated file that we're looking to work from. And once the program has done its work, it processes the MMS IDs and outputs this output into the interface, and also outputs a new Excel file into the programs folder. And here we have the results. Off screen on the left side of the Excel output is an MMS ID column, and that is how we can uniquely pull up the records in Alma that we are going to correct. We've included in the outputs an overall record condition and also a report of our local brief level rule as a backup for assessing the records. But the other columns are effective on their own. So some of the things that we are actively testing for, we test for call number issues. If only a single LC call number is present, that call number is the output. If there are less than one or more than one, then there are alerts for those conditions. This set, as you can see, has no call number issues. We have a nice column of actual LC call numbers. We test for location determinations. Most of our books go in our basement stacks, and this is our default. The LC range of the letters A through D, as well as our oversize materials, are all shelved on our second floor or floor 2 as our Alma location code is labeled. This set has a number of B-class entries for which we need to adjust the coding, the location code for. We test for size determinations, and if oversize, we also add a size prefix. These mostly seem to be normal size, although there is one record that is CIP, so we will need to physically examine the item to determine what its size is, or to check OCLC to see if it has been improved to post-CIP status and has an actual size in the record. Then we test for format, which chiefly arose because we were discovering that some records were delivered for the electronic version rather than the tangible version. We also recognized the need to flag for the possibility that we had a multi-volume set. At the moment, this sieve is fairly crude, so we're actually also catching incidences where there's a crude statement of extent, such as 1 volume. And then the coding problems column records a couple other random issues that we had discovered while we were developing the program. And then the previous output is delivered to the copy cataloger who is working on it remotely, and they conduct the necessary edits. As conditions are resolved and edits are made, the corresponding cell is highlighted in green. Resolved conditions that will require action are highlighted in orange. Unresolved conditions are highlighted in red. The edited spreadsheet is round trip back to Schaefer Library, where it's printed out, matched to the truck, and used by the students to cross-check entries. Any orange entries are pulled to be addressed, typically for relabeling for size prefixes, which are not part of the pre-processing profile with our vendor. Any red entries are pulled to be addressed by the catalog and metadata librarian. Green and unhighlighted entries go directly to the processing pipeline, or as it exists now, the review pipeline, since we now have a pre-processing, we've contracted for pre-processing services. So in this case, pretty much everything is resolved except for one entry is an M-level record, which upon investigation does have a corresponding DLC record for the same ISBN, but the dates don't match. So we will have to pull that for verification around the publication and imprint data. And then one entry is a CIP record, which upon investigation is still at the CIP stage in OCLC. So we will have to pull that for local edits for the extent and size. So both of those have been red flagged and would be pulled and set aside. Meanwhile, all the edits were straightforward location code tip flips based on the class letter and have been green coded. And so this truck, once those two items are removed, can be moved forward. So we've seen a progression from workflows with repeated one-by-one actions to workflows increasingly characterized by batch handling, including now at the cataloging stage. The only one-by-one interaction with the materials and records is at the final quality assurance component, where such edits are unlikely to affect the processing. The shift from ensuring near perfection at the outset to an as needed for the next step approach is cataloging turned on its head. And with that, thank you, and we're open for questions.
All right, thank you very much, John and Hamza. Again, if anyone has any questions for them, feel free to throw them in the Q&A. And I don't know, John, if you can see them. There aren't any there right now, but if they do start coming in, feel free to pick and choose as you'd like. We got about 5 minutes for questions if anyone has them. And thank you again, both of you. That was really, really cool to see.
Oh, thank you. It was a real pleasure, and it was a great opportunity to work closely with Hamza on an internship and to bring a programming, explore the possibilities of programming to the cataloging workflow. So I see that there is a question about what is your process for ebooks. So at this point, ebooks, most of our ebook materials are handled at the package level through the Alma community zone. We do have, with the onset of COVID, we have been trying to shift rush requests and course-specific requests, such as for class reserves, to one-by-one purchases, and but those are sufficiently narrow in scope that I still just go to OCLC and download, overlay the rudimentary discovery records and bring those in. We have a normalization rule to clean them up, and I pretty much just let it go at that. So are you back on campus to match book with bib record for the ones flagged in red? Yes, we have, we're at about 50% density, and I am on campus 2 to 3 days a week. And the students are kind of alternating when they're available so that we can resolve those questions. One of the things out of the New York pause was that, so we had about 27 shelves of materials to be processed when we got back, and of those we had about 2 shelves of materials that were still in the records were in bad condition, and I've been able to pare that down as subsequent updates have come through for those records, or I've tackled some of them, and we're now down to about 2/3 of a shelf. So I was really pleased with how we came through the New York pause. Is information about the Java app being made available for others, for example, through GitHub? If so, can you share this information? So that's Hamza. I know Hamza has posted it on GitHub, but he's the technical guru on this, so I'll let him chime in on that to expand on that reply.
So I'll share the GitHub link with the people hosting this conference, and I hope they can forward it to anyone interested.
Great.
Yes, we'll make sure to do that. Thank you.
Are there any plans to automate, further collaborate with computer science students to develop even more automated processes? That's a great question. I think at this point, Hamza had some further ideas, and we'll see where that evolves. For the moment, we're still in the consolidation phase of working out, making sure that we have a solid handle on this process before we incorporate any additional changes. But it's really been remarkable how much in explaining this, it's kind of like, those moments if you're ever doing bibliographic instruction and you're like preparing for a class and you have these aha discoveries, and then you go to present it in class and it's just kind of like, oh yeah, it's just that's just it. And it's like, no, this was like this big moment. And so we had this big moment over the summer and through the fall of working out this process. So we're just gelling that before we make further evolutionary steps. How big is your student staff, and or how is your student work program structured? The responsibilities indicated for your student employees are impressive. So I used to have about a half a dozen student employees. We're now down to about 2. And yeah, we've actually, our students used to basically, they would use a machine to apply glue to book plates and put the book plates in the books, and just a lot of just physical processing. And as time has gone on, and as our ILSs have evolved as well, we've really had to engage them much more creatively and at a much higher intellectual level, and we're really glad for that, because it's our students, it's like, we like to think of our school as kind of the Lake Wobegon, and all the students are above average, and it's nice that we're able to use them at the mental caliber of which the school is known. Did you
I'm gonna
develop?
have to cut in here.
Cut it
I'm
out?
sorry,
Okay.
we're at 10:30, but thank you again for your presentation, and thank you everyone for your questions.
Okay.
I'm not sure if you included any like your email or any contact information in your slides, since we'll be sharing the presentations and everything. So hopefully, if you did, then people will be able to maybe follow up on some of those questions that remained unanswered with you.
Okay.
But again,
I'll
thank
make
you very
that
much.
edit. If you keep the chat questions up for a second, I will try and grab them.